Nest, right? It's just you controlling one device with an app. Very easy to do that, and sometimes it makes sense, but for the most part, oftentimes it doesn't, because it creates one of these push products again. So don't do that unless it kind of fits the model or a real pain point that we talked about. That makes sense. Or you happen to be an ex-Apple guy that invented the iPod and can get a lot of money and market the crap out of it itself for a few $1 billion. So don't think Nest is an anomaly. I'll talk about Nest. I resisted when I'm talking about Nest. It's an anomaly in my case. It's a beautiful product. It's an iPhone on the wall. If you looked at the explosion diagrams of it, it's gorgeous. There's a reason why it's $250. It's a beautiful thing inside as well as it's on the outside. They did a fantastic job on user experience, and Will was right. That is absolutely key, because all the other thermostats before them were crap. I apologize to any thermostat manufacturers here. So they nailed that. They nailed the user experience, and they nailed the marketing side of it. Whether or not it's worth whatever it's worth, I don't want to get into that. There's silos of value around it, but not every company can be a Nest. So there's a lot of frenzy about, oh my God, I'm going to be the next Nest because I got a sprinkler controller or I got a door lock thing that I can control with my iPhone. That's it's much more an exception than it is reality. So don't fall for that trap. Is kind of my advice.
Great. Well,
I have a slightly different view on that. I think Nest is not an anomaly, and if you abstract Nest, forget about the thermostat part. It's a beautifully designed form factor. So 4 components: beautifully designed form factor, UI, and visual design and interaction. Great hardware, great software, and the 4th one in machine learning. I think this is the future. And we're seeing beyond indications beyond Nest that the reason a camera company like Dropcam was worth $500 million was exactly because of these 4 components. It was beautifully designed. It worked amazingly simply, and setup was. I don't know if you've ever tried to install a Dropcam. I was going to Korea a few weeks ago, and I had one at home, and I bought 2 others. I'm just doing free commercials for Dropcam here. But I had 10 minutes before my car arrives, and within that 10 minutes, I had 2 uninstalled Dropcams, and I installed them, and I connected them to my the rest of the camera system that I had. That's incredible. And when you add machine learning to that, then you differentiate from cats, from dogs, from humans, from children, people who live in the house, from people who are not supposed to be in the house. Those are the things that they create the eventual value. It's not, as Reza said, just build an app and connect it to a device because it has Wi-Fi or something. That is not going to cut it anymore. And if you look at I compare it to the evolution of networking and internet. We started from connectivity and switches and routers, and eventually everyone got connected. Then it became a browser war. It wasn't a switch or router war anymore, because you had to see these and get access to the data on the internet through browsers. Then browser became irrelevant. Browsers became completely irrelevant. It became the applications that were running within browsers that Facebook came about. Social networking craze came about. So, in my view, this IoT thing is going through the same type of evolution and maturity. And the next way, so we've been through the connectivity part. Things are connected, apps can control them, Wemo, Hue, all this and that. The next wave is to actually create algorithms to make sense of data to do something useful. That's where I would spend, if I wanted to do something, I would spend my energy and money and time.
Shane, what can't you wait to have?
Oh my Lord. They're adopting one thing. We might not want them to, but if you look at like the mass market right now for connected home, the numbers and speed of adoption are around drop cams and Nests and other pieces that go in there. And I think it's our job as technologists to realize that they're probably not going to, think 5 years in the future about how they're going to have their, these things working together. They're just going to start pulling these solutions in, and it's up to us to be in front of it so that they can adopt on these very, very easy products. But then we have a way in the cloud to start tying them together so that they start to work there. I mean, I think in many cases, you know, you're going to ask these consumers 3 years from now, you're going to say, hey, do you have a home automation system? Do you have a smart home? And they'll go, no. You know, I guess my garage door I can control, and my front door lock I've got, and you know, I've got cameras so I can, you know, I can see those things and go through. And yeah, they all kind of work together. So I got kind of a Harmony app that works on them, but I don't have a home automation system. I mean, I think that's kind of how it's going to emerge. And any attempt we make to make that process less organic than that is just going to mean we're not going to sell anything, because we're going counter to how these consumers adopt. So our homes, we just are really picky about what we'll bring in through that front door. It can't cost a lot extra, and my Lord, it can't be complex, right? I spend all that time at work thinking about hard things, and when I come home, I want, you know, it needs to flow with me. But I think the connectivity done right has the ability to make things easier, to make things more simple, to more intuitive. So if you're thinking about designing something, or you're thinking about bringing a product, the first thing I'd say is, you know, there's a lot of plumbing and stuff like that that you shouldn't have to reinvent, you know. There's companies like Arrayant and others out there that build platforms for this. And then the second piece is really think about how you're fixing something that's broken, right? Find something that we're just used to, but it is incredibly broken, and figure out a way that by adding that smartphone controller, by adding those other pieces to it, you just make that product, you know, way more awesome.
Cool, those are great answers. So I'd like to kind of throw it open now to the audience. I'm sure you guys have got a bundle of questions, so we're going to hand the mic out here.
Can you tell us the adoption rate for the new homes? Wait. And if you could say who you are and you're with.
Okay, my name is Gnani Panani Kumar. My question is, what is the adoption rate of these connected devices in the new homes? Right, what are the devices which is coming pre-installed in the new homes which are built in the US?
I don't know anything specific on that. I know that a number of, especially we're seeing internationally, where somebody will build an apartment building, and then a number of our customers are installing devices in those to make it basically, at least an apartment that comes with an app. Because it turns out the stuff that you can put in that, you can sell that smart apartment for a lot more than the cost of the things to go in there. So I think we're seeing some real estate folks starting to come in that way. The area that I'm most familiar with are things that are happening internationally, particularly in Asia.
So can I answer that as well? Thank you. So I can't talk about specific numbers, obviously, but because they're pretty sensitive. But I can tell you that if you're seeing 2 or 3 commercials a day from Comcast here, or 1 from ADT, you know, it's doing pretty well, because they're putting a lot of marketing muscle in terms of for delivering these kinds of mass market services, the truly mass market. So it's hockey sticking nicely, and the education that they're providing, I think, helps everybody. So every commercial you see from AT&T helps a Comcast customer, even though they're competing, or Verizon customer, because they're educating all of us. It's sort of, we're in a land grab mode, if you will. It's a pretty early in the market space. Nobody's worried about taking customers away from their competitor in this space. They will once it's commoditized, like phone and internet was, and TV. But for now, it's land grab. So it's a crazy, 20% of the homes, 22% of the homes in the U.S. have monitored security traditionally. And if you want, I can talk offline about those metrics, but this is a whole new thing that's all about, quality of life and perceived daily value they're getting out of it, not 2 alarms a year that are probably false alarms that you traditionally get. So it's doing pretty well.
I summarize it in one thing, without being very specific about the type of devices that are going to the market, we're going to see in the market. The devices that we're going to see in the market, and particularly the ones that are going to succeed, become successful products, are the ones that are extremely easy to use. I'll give you an example. Right now, if you want to leave your house, and you have a security system, alarm system, you have to tell the system that you're leaving the house. Why? If the sensors are cheap enough and with a little bit of pattern recognition, you can detect that very quickly. So those are the type of things that people will build and people will pay for and people will buy. I give an analogy about car transmissions. At some point, there was no automatic car transmissions. We had to use manual shifting of gears. Now we cannot even imagine a world without automatic transmission. The same thing is happening in a connected phone and a smartphone. So the experience is going to drive what people will pay for.
Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Pranav, and I have a question on. So we talked about the devices which people build and get installed, but there is a whole new suite of products which are going out, like the beacons and the tags and the tiles, and more of like do-it-yourself. You now figure out what you want to do with it. Could any of you comment on what's the future you see for, this is a separate segment that you just provide the users with tools that empower them to now define how they want to make their home smart themselves?
So I could just add a quick note to that. Knowing where a user is valuable. Whether we see value as users in it or not, remains to be seen. And beacons, the primary purpose of beacon is proximity, indoor location identification. Retail so far has picked up on it, and that's where most of the value that we can see today is apparent and comes basically visible to us. But what and how we're going to use beacons in the future remains to be seen. I think as a platform, it has a lot of future and potential, but we haven't seen really much beyond the retail value yet.
So are you asking specifically about kind of do-it-yourself products or beacons and tags in general?
So, if you think about like this, the Bluetooth 4.0, the low power emitting, it sits there, you don't have to change battery for a year. Seems pretty powerful, a small transmitter. And now you give it to the consumers and make it very easy for them to set up a quick network or set up a quick, a small geofencing or whatever you make. So I just wanted to get your view on what's the future of those kind of products.
So the do-it-yourself products
Yeah.
is what you're talking about. So the do-it-yourself market has been there forever, right? So 4 years ago, 30 years ago, you had X10, if you guys remember X10, go to Radio Shack, you buy a module, you plug it in, you can now turn off your porch light from your bed before you go to bed. That market is never going to go away. I think you're going to have people that are techie, geeky, confident enough, maybe not geeky, but they're confident enough that they don't have that much functionality. They just want to go off and do something very simple. And the technology is going to get better. You're going to have BLE, you're going to have Z-Wave products that are now out there. So that's still going to be there, but I would argue that it's not mass. It's never been mass market, right? That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum in home automation has been, so one end is hobbyist do-it-yourselfers, traditionally. The other end of the spectrum is the high-end home. Hey, I got $30,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 burning in my pocket, and I want to automate my home. And you go and hire somebody to go do that for you, and they come in and you treat them as a subcontractor. They design it, they spec it, they come and install it. They take a month or 3 weeks or whatever to do it, and they leave. And if you have a problem with it, you call them, they come back and service it and add something to it. That's the other end of the spectrum. The mass market is right in the middle of that, right? Which is the guys that want something more than just a turn off the porch light from the bedroom, but they don't have $10,000 to spend, right? And that's the market that's, I think, being addressed right now by the service providers that I was talking about, because 110 million households in the U.S. can all take advantage of that. It's not for the hobbyist and techie, and it's not for the affluent homeowners that want to do it. So it's truly, truly mass market. I don't use that term lightly. When I say mass market, I mean tens of millions, not 100,000 or 400,000. Mass market. And that is the single most, biggest, I think, inflection point that I've seen in the last couple of years. And now that's finally happening. And it's not easy to do that. You got to solve a couple of key problems, which I'm writing on now, which I can talk to you about afterwards. And how to actually, what we found to actually make something in the mass market.
A couple of people here. I think this gentleman over here had his hand up first.
and my name is Jay. So as this industry matures, homes get smarter, you get very smart applications, especially machine learning and so on are used. For example, this Nest example in Austin you talked about. These machines and the applications make decisions for you, take actions for you. Now, will that be taking you to a situation where the consumer will be worried about losing control? And, how do you deal with that? Because as I'm defining application in the space, I'm seeing that, and this could be a backfire, backlash on the entire industry if you're not careful about where the customer does not feel like he's losing control versus he is. What comments about that?
Absolutely. I think beyond losing control, we're sometimes willing to lose control because there's enough value for us to do so. We lose control when we hire a driver to drive us around. We lose control when we sit in a taxi or a bus. But beyond that is when there are these machines make mistakes and they have false positives or false negatives in costly scenarios. In the context of home and smart home, for example, if you have a smart lighting system in your baby's room and you just spent half an hour, 45 minutes to put him to sleep and get him to bed, and now 3 in the morning the light goes on and the baby starts crying. That's a emotionally costly mistake. So those type of stuff, if they happen too often, and initially they will happen too often, we're going to fix them. We're going to learn how to make them behave a lot better with a lot less false positives and negatives. But until the technology matures, we're going to have those. And that's just the nature of early adopters. Early adopters will have to deal with those. They pay higher prices and they get faultier products. And they make it ready for the next market.
One of the things that we're finding right away, we've done about 50 of these products now. And I think the part that I didn't understand when we started doing the first ones were, that level of automation that you talked about, there's this huge canyon where, the first thing you can get is just very, very easy control manually. Like from, pull out my phone and in one hit, make what happens, affect the behavior that I want to affect, and that's very useful. And then there's this whole big desert in the middle of what I would call not quite smart enough yet automation. And I'll even throw, some sacred cows in here like scheduling. When we talk about our home, setting something up as a schedule seems like a really good idea until it isn't, until our lives aren't really, really follow those patterns or until those things go through. And I would also chalk up, 90% of the machine learning stuff that I see as well, even if it has that like 5% flaw where it doesn't line up, or I don't understand why it's doing what it does, that disconcerting feeling. And then I think, if it's really nailed and it really lines up with the consumer, you can kind of get to this nirvana on the other side. But I almost think that for the next for the next few years or so, a lot of products are going to sort of end up in that desert in the middle where it's enough home automation to kind of really tick you off, but not enough there to really kind of get out of your way and do what's supposed to be done.
Hi, I'm Shobana. I'm from the property casualty insurance industry. Thanks for the panel, by the way, very informative. Reza, you talked a lot about the importance of security and encryption, and Mo, you talked about privacy and consumer willingness to share data. What does the regulatory landscape look like? Not just from a consumer protection standpoint, but from who owns the data, sounds like there are a lot of gatekeepers in this ecosystem of smart homes. Who owns the data, who has access to the data? Could you talk a little bit about that, or is it all being figured out, or is it kind of a very nascent stage? Can you give some more insight on that?
Sure. So this is nothing new and related that came up with smart home or sensors in the home. We've had that issue at the moment we went online. And that the data in some sites are their usage agreements. In their usage agreement, they explicitly say that we own the data. Right? We had this OkCupid issue recently. I don't know if you guys were following, that this company was intentionally, it's a matchmaking making site, and intentionally was giving false information to its users to test some hypotheses. And they got away with it, at least legally, because they said our terms of use indicates that we own the data. So there's nothing you can do. But it's for your good. We're going to make our algorithms better. Facebook, you own the data, at least theoretically. It's along the spectrum. The thing that is changing because of the smartphone is what I think Jerry was touching on. That is, it's home. It's our home. It's that sacred place that we wanted to keep safe and secure and away from this madness of outside. How are we going to accept giving that up? And my sense is, based on what we've done in the past as consumers and as a country particularly, especially here, we're going to give it up. At least our one signal away from me. As long as there is enough value for us to do. And security and safety are very good values.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we're seeing right now in insurance, right, in this piece as well, are, you know, you've seen like the company, the auto insurance companies that put the accelerometers, you know, am I willing to feed that USB stick back into my computer to get the discount? So I think you see people kind of making that balance between privacy or something like that as well. But, you know, if my home insurance company sits there and says, well, I really want to know that if you're not there and your smoke detector goes off, somebody's going to come and put out the fire so I don't have to buy you a new house, and I'll, you know, maybe give you a little discount to do it. I think those sort of trade-offs will be there, and I think they'll probably be willing participants on both sides, and because, you know, the assumed loss of privacy in that case isn't great.
So I agree, the type of data I think dictates the level of privacy that you care about. So if it's your smoke detector or your carbon monoxide sensor, that's going to call a central station. Do I care how private that is? Me personally, probably not. I would suspect most people don't. If it's my doors and windows opening or my thermostat information, because the thermostat, you can infer a lot from the thermostat about what you're doing at home, you're not, how often you're walking about and all that stuff, because it's got motion sensors that Nest does. That's pretty private, not super private. Camera, video, images, pictures, that's super private, right? So really, you can't just say home data and just say, is it all covered under the same thing? And, you know, I mean, we learned years ago, so cameras is one of the dozens of products that you can put into an eye-controlled ecosystem. And we thought, oh, people are going to have cameras everywhere, right? Well, no, we actually learned that people don't want to put cameras everywhere. Especially if it's in a bedroom or a bathroom or someplace facing the users that are going, because even though it's not doing anything, they don't want this thing staring at them. So most of the cameras in our systems are kind of facing outdoors, or facing the backyard, or the front door, or the garage, things that are not so private, but you still want to kind of get value out of them that they are. So, hope that answers.
Any what the question in the back here?
I can't be loud enough, I think. This IoT market has driven sensor market as well, right? So the first smartphone that we had like 3 sensors in it. Now it has like 10 sensors in it, right? Which sensor do you think still has the need? And either it exists but it's expensive, so you can mass produce it, or it doesn't exist and you feel that it's needed. For example, smoke detector has been around, so it's not anything sexy, right, to develop as from an hardware perspective. But the gyroscope is something pretty new. What do you see the next one, or whatever that exists but it's not cheap to use? Whatever is helpful from the hardware side.
Is that for anybody in particular, or
No.
any of us? I'll take the first one. So I think I'm excited a lot about accelerometers because they keep getting better and better and more sensitive to different axes and all that. I think there's a lot of data and movement in general that you can infer. You know, door sensors, for example, you can have one sensor that can detect shatter. Right now in security systems, you have shatter, glass shatter sensors, you have door sensors. You have different sensors that do different things, but you can potentially combine all those into one and do that. The other one is sound, I think. That goes into analytics. If you can, or DSP, if you can detect sounds and analyze them in a very different way, So you can detect whether it's kids screaming, or the glass was broke, or was a gunshot, or something else altogether. And you can do that cleverly. None of them out there today do that. And that would be, I think, pretty useful, because you can put that on streetlights. And you can imagine you put a sound sensor on a streetlight, and it can detect a woman screaming, or a gun being fired, or some guy just screaming because he's not feeling well, or whatever it is, right, or a medical emergency. So those kinds of sensors, I think, are, they're not cheap for sure. I think accelerometers are getting cheaper because they're in every phone now.
Yeah.
They're going in that direction. So those are the two that come to mind without only giving 2 minutes of thought. You want to-
Sure. Well, sensors are not really expensive that much. Most, even like 9-degree freedom sensors that they have accelerometer, magnetometer, and gyro in them, you can buy them fairly cheaply these days. It's not the sensor that matters moving forward, and it's not the hardware. Period. It's what you do with the data that comes out of the sensor. Even camera is a fairly expensive sensor relatively to other sensors. There's a lot you can do with that video feed or that image feed that requires a lot of algorithms and processing. For example, one thing that Dropcam is working on, one of the issues that they have for people who have pets, and when they leave and turn on their notification system, every time the cat or the dog moves around the house, they get an email. But they're putting a machine learning engine in place that recognizes it's a cat. It's a dog, it's not a human body. So if they see a human body, they send an email. So those are the type of values on top of sensors that are going to make sensors and sensor data more valuable. I think that's where the wave is. Again, I go back to that comparison that I made to internet. We had networking gear, and then we had browser, and then we had applications. I think sensors and sensor data and connected sensors are the networking part, and the inclusion of the smartphone apps, and those are the browser level control for the user, but we're going beyond those. And the stress that I made on machine learning and algorithms is because that's where you can make sense of those pieces of data and create that.
You know, I think the biggest sensor that is allowing these systems and these products to get data is the internet. Right? You imbue that product with connectivity, right? And now all of a sudden the richness of the data set that you can bring to that kind of outstrips anything that you can start putting on the device itself. So, I think in many cases, the initial thing is, can I put a bunch of moisture sensors somewhere? Well, no, or I can tie into a weather service that knows how much it's raining in my area and knows that it's going to be raining tomorrow. Much more sophisticated applications. So we encourage, when we're working with, Whirlpool, or we're working with these big manufacturers, to think about how they're going to do it, what their connected product is going to be, is that they're saying, the internet is the best and biggest sensor of all. How could that be brought to bear on making your product work better for the consumer?
So basically you're saying you have enough data, let's get some meaningful thing out of it. And that's how I infer like algorithms. We do have enough data. Let's make some sense out of it.
Yeah, that's a big one. Or don't spend a lot of time heavy lifting trying to get this done inside the home. In many cases, there's a data set outside that will far outstrip anything that you could get.
Well, I think, be respectful of everyone.
I just want to be respectful of everybody's time here. It's 8:30, and I think this has been really great conversation. I think panelists, you've been terrific. I mean, really, a lot of really great, thoughtful kind of responses to maybe some inane questions that I put forward. But I really want to kind of like a round of applause here for our panelists. I think, thank you and good night, and there will be food and drink and networking next.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Jerry, for moderating the panel. And yeah, we're going to close the door at 9, so stay around if you want to ask a few questions or practice your French. We're going to close at 9. Thank you.
Okay.
how big, obviously. Yes, I haven't. Let me read your email. Let me read your email. So